Thank you for listening to Living Our Best with Memory Loss.
Hi, I'm Bob Stryer, one of your podcast hosts. I do have mild cognitive impairment, MCI, and it was brought on by a stroke.
I'm SuAnne Cobb. I'm one of your hosts. I have mild cognitive impairment due to having MS.
And I'm Dennis Lowe, also a producer of this podcast, and I have a diagnosis of young onset, early stage Alzheimer's disease.
I'm David Bollinger. They call me Debo. I run the equipment here so you can see and hear these guys. Welcome to our podcast, Living Our Best with Memory Loss.
The purpose of this podcast is for people to share their experiences with cognitive decline. It is not to provide medical advice. We are not doctors, and we stress that what might have worked for one person might not work for others. If anything you hear on this program inspires you to explore treatment options, we recommend you do so in consultation with your physician.
Hello, welcome to another one of our podcasts, Living Our Best with Memory Loss.
Today we have special guests, Margaret Bickley and her wife, SuAnne Cobb. And SuAnne is one of our hosts.
So tell me, SuAnne, how long have you two been together?
Well, we've known each other for, 25, 30 years. We worked together at the same pediatric hospital. We're both nurses, and that's how we met. But we've been together as a couple about 15 years.
It's very nice. So you were both at the same hospital, and you were a nurse also?
Yes.
Very good. So you have a dementia?
I do. I have mild cognitive impairment, and mine is due to having multiple sclerosis. We know this about memory loss, that it's a big umbrella, and there are a lot of different reasons that we can be under that umbrella that got us there. We share a lot of the same things, challenges and obstacles with memory loss. However, our reason for being there might be different, and mine is multiple sclerosis.
So with the multiple sclerosis, does everybody come down with
That's a really good question,
dementia?
Bob, because about 40 to 60% of people with multiple sclerosis will have cognitive impairment. It usually stays mild to moderate and doesn't always progress as some of the other types of diagnoses do. And it's often referred to as cog fog in the multiple sclerosis community, meaning sort of code for what we would call, the rest of us would call, mild cognitive impairment. When you're first diagnosed, with that and with the MCI, you're just like, oh gosh, I can't, this is so hard. And yet what I found just by living it is you use different strategies for that, just like I do for my mild cognitive impairment.
So how does your impairment present? I mean, what are some notable symptoms? And Margaret, you can probably answer this just as well.
Well, I'll let Sue start.
Well, I've had cognitive impairment for a fairly long time because I've had MS a long time. I was diagnosed when I was 34, and I was 71 now. So I've had it a long time. And so I started noticing that the first thing was word finding trouble. I could picture the object that I was trying to come up with in my brain. I probably could draw it for you, but I couldn't think of the flipping word, and that would happen. And at the time I was given a lot of presentations, and it would just hit. And so I had to try to think of other ways to get my point across sometimes when I couldn't think of the correct word. So that was challenging. And then forgetting, short-term memory loss was certainly a part of it. Misplacing items, things like that. I am very, very hypersensitive to noise. So much so that I bought noise canceling earbuds and headset to block out the noise. It if I'm somewhere where I can't physically leave or don't have my earbuds for some reason, I'll go to the bathroom and deep breathe. It just starts to make me very anxious and is feeling like I need to leave the environment because it's so noisy. And I don't process information. The noise just sort of takes over. And so that's probably one of the most uncomfortable things that I've noticed. And I think anxiety is also common with folks with cognitive impairment and memory loss. And whether that's because they realize what's going on and it makes them, anxious. Uh, and for me, I was just hyper aware of when I would make a mistake. And having mild cognitive impairment and the way that it affected my thought processes led to me retiring fairly early. I retired at 62 from nursing because I felt like it could affect anything I was doing as a nurse, even if I was teaching, or I couldn't think of one part of nursing where if I forgot something, that it couldn't negatively impact my patients and families. And ethically, I wasn't going to do that. So I retired from nursing early. And I, I just think that that's important to be able to be aware of how is this impacting my work life, my daily life, my relationship, and exploring that with others that can give you honest feedback.
One thing that I didn't notice that other people might notice, you're saying there's something about your mouth that does weird things, but I've never noticed it with you as much. I mean, when I kiss you, I could tell, but
Really? You never mentioned.
I didn't want it to come out on tape, but and in
It's
front
out
of
there.
and in front of Lori, but
it's out
Bob
there.
and
Now we know.
Bob
I'm not
and I-
surprised.
Bob and I just had this instant connection that we cannot ignore.
Is
Not anymore.
inappropriateness, is that a symptom
Yes.
of, okay.
Sometimes sexual inappropriateness.
Okay, well,
is a symptom.
we haven't gone there yet, but we're getting close. All right.
Okay. Yes, Bob. I do have one of the symptoms I have that is MS, but related, and also particularly related is a permanent side effect from a medication that I took, obviously too long. And it's called tardive dyskinesia. So I'm very sensitive. Like I always want the mic right in front of my mouth, but my mouth will do things. It makes sort of uncontrollable movements. It will, like, sometimes it will look like I'm frowning and I don't even know I'm doing it, or there'll be sort of random movements. Grandchildren are so honest, and so they'll go, "You're doing that weird thing with your mouth again." I am very self-conscious about it.
Well, you don't have to be with us.
Thank you, Bob.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that.
So curious, Margaret, and thank you for joining us. I've wanted to meet you for so long, and then today I was just so excited you were finally here. What have you learned, curious, as a spouse and a partner? What can you tell other folks who are in your position, my position? What is the most essential tip that you've learned through this whole process? Is there anything that you can share to help others in our situation? I know that we don't, both of you and I agree that we don't love the term caregiver. You're a partner, you're a spouse. I mean, we went over that. But someone, what would you advise somebody, or what have you learned? What's one of the most important elements of this diagnosis?
Well, first, thank you. It's been lovely to meet you and you, Bob, today. Um,
Not you, Dennis.
I knew Dennis. I knew
Okay.
Dennis.
Debo. Don't
Sorry.
forget
Don't-
Debo.
Debo and
Okay, yeah, it's
John,
okay. Gotcha. I was throwing out a little
everybody.
jab.
And I've known Dennis for a while.
Okay.
I think one of the best tips that I would give anybody is that if you can be patient and respectful, and not rush to jump in and take control. It's hard sometimes, really hard. But just take a breath and slow down and let things unfold as they will, is probably the biggest lesson that I'm still trying to learn, is that, um, I think part of the reason you and I both kind of, our hackles get raised with caregiver is that, in some ways the connotation is that some of that self-reliance, that able to do for the person, is they either really cannot do that, or somebody has taken that away from them. I never want to do that, but I know that slowing down and giving SuAnne the space to find the word, until she says, okay, what am I trying to say? Then I can do that, But it is a hard lesson to learn, and I am still learning it.
I am still learning it too, and I would agree with you. That is the hardest lesson because I'll say to Bob, "Did you turn on the grill?" And he'll say, "No, not yet." And I want to go turn on the grill. I want to go, and it's something that I need because I'm a doer and I do things fast and so that is my biggest challenge, is being patient and allowing him to do it because he wants to be helpful and he wants to be proactive. And I always look at it as though I'm relieving him of that and taking it off his plate.
Right. And I think that
I
jumping
think I'm
in
helping him.
with the word is helpful,
Me
but
too.
it's not. And it's not viewed, certainly SuAnne sometimes does not see that as helpful. So I need to back off.
Well, it's really funny because I had the same situation this week. With my diagnosis came, or with the appearance of symptoms came, a pretty major change in my personality. I became nice. I became sweet, and
We're glad to know you now,
yeah,
Dennis.
because in my former life I wasn't, but and Melissa, my wife Melissa says you never get angry anymore, you never get mad anymore. But anyway, a couple of days ago, I had said, well, I'll do that. We were doing chores around the house. I'll do that. And she went ahead and did it. And I said, Melissa, I said I would do that. Well, I just did that. I says, look, I says, I'm not going to be able to do this stuff forever. I can do it now. Let me do it. And you don't realize, she probably didn't realize how important it was for me that I assert myself and do that silly thing. And it's kind of what you were talking about. You just don't realize, oh, I'm doing her a favor or I'm doing him a favor. No, not really. Just let me do it. And as far as I can, for as long as I can, let me do it.
I realized, we're all human, and there are going to be times when each of us is frustrated.
Yeah.
And I realized that I need to be patient because this is hard for Margaret. I mean, it's not easy loving somebody that has this going on, and the main thing I want is for both of us to feel so loved and cared for that we can share how we're feeling about stuff at any time, whether we're frustrated, proud, whatever it is, I want us to have that connection and that not to be broken. What having this diagnosis, as well as MS, is continuing to teach me every day is that I really need to be purposeful and intentional about my schedule and how much I have, how many spoons I have, and it's really about self-care. It's about planning that and being able to say no to a lot of great things. I mean, I'm retired now. It feels like the whole schedule's wide open, but for me it's not. I have to be careful about it.
Yeah, you had mentioned spoons.
Yeah, well, we have a friend. I've known her since we were both 14 and in junior high school, who had suffered a traumatic brain injury. And one of the things she learned in the therapies as she recuperated was that we each start every day with a jar of clean spoons, and you have another jar for dirty spoons. And as you make decisions through the day, you're using those spoons up. So you have a certain amount of energy or these spoons that you can use during a day. If you use them all up by noon and keep making decisions, you're borrowing from the next day and you're getting further and further behind. So we've learned that with Sue, one of the things, and I think this is natural for all of us, as the day goes on, we get more tired. And if we've had to make a lot of decisions about what are we going to wear, what are we going to eat, where are we going to go, all those things, they use up a lot of energy. And so I'm very cognizant that she sets her schedule, and that a lot of times as the day goes on and it becomes later and later, it's harder for her to make some decisions. So especially like if you've been gone all day long doing her group in the morning and meeting with another friend in the afternoon, the evening is pretty much given to not having to make decisions and just,
Relaxing.
kind of relax, rest, recoup. Yeah.
I think sometimes we use up all our spoons immediately, and
Yeah,
it's gone. It's done for the day.
you can. Yeah.
And I just found that I attempt to do no more than 2 things in one day. And by 2 things, I mean, like, I had an appointment this morning, and then I had this afternoon. And before, I used to could juggle all kinds of things, and I just can't do that and be present without being so exhausted. And I really wanted to not be exhausted, especially for our podcast this afternoon. Um, and when we leave here, though, I will probably just need to chill and relax, you know.
That's so interesting. Why I love this podcast is I learn so much from everybody who's on this podcast. And it's interesting because I think I put too much on Bob's plate this past month and these past couple of weeks. Would you agree? And
But his eyes
I,
are smiling
I
while he
know,
says it. Sweet.
but it's interesting because I do look at him as retired, and then I think, well, he can handle it, but it turns out that some of these events are later in the day, and I need to learn. I love the expression, one of the most empowering words, single word in the English language is the word no. And I need to be better at that. Because don't you think I maybe put too much on you as well?
Well, not really. Uh, I still think I can do a lot. And so, uh, by you not giving me things to do, then I'll just lay in bed and drink coffee and watch TV. So that's why coming here and working for you and doing these podcasts and other things like that keeps me active. I've been active all my life, just like these people have. And it's really hard to stop and have other people do stuff for you. And I don't like that. I like to do it myself. And I get a little angry, and I don't mean to, but that's just the way I am.
Yeah, but you're right. You too, Margaret, do you see that too? That you want to jump in and help SuAnne, but then like you said earlier, you try to let her do it herself and and I'm learning to do that
Yeah.
too. It's hard for me.
It is hard.
There's a tendency to want it to be better for the person, and so helpfulness is very sweet and appreciated. And yet, I hear what you're saying, Bob. It's like I want to be as independent as I can for as long as I can, because I think that's one of the ways that we live our best life. There are times that I know that Margaret loves people. I used to laugh and say, you're the most extroverted introvert. I know. She really does get that. And I think most of us are a balance of that, but or are parts of that, not necessarily very balanced, but she gets a lot of her own energy from others. And so she really loves being around people. And a lot of that, some of our friends are younger and working and is sometimes meet me for dinner or, do this or do that. And I'm just out of spoons. I've been out of spoons since yesterday about 4:00, and so that feels bad because I know she likes to do that. And so at times I feel bad and I'll encourage her to go on and to do that. Or I try to reach deep and imagine a spoon is there and go. But it's really a day by day kind of thing with both my cognitive decline and my fatigue. So
Sounds like you could cheat a little bit and keep a spoon or two in
I
your
think
pocket
I think
that
a
you can take
special
out.
that is such a good idea, Bob. I need a special spoon pocket for emergency use only.
I've been sitting here thinking of deficit spooning.
There you go.
That's lovely.
You can't deficit spoon forever.
That's true. That's very true. And what usually happens to me is I put myself at risk for my MS flaring up. I have, because of the medications I take for my MS, my immune system is affected. And so if I truly am running on a deficit, then I'm more likely to get sicker with other things. So I just have to really, even though going measured, activity and going slower is not my favorite speed. However, I do better and I'm happier when, I feel better. I'm happier when I can do that well.
Yeah, I think that's something that we probably all need to learn to do, that we try to push ourselves beyond the point that we shouldn't be pushing ourselves, and it doesn't really work. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob, because that's so true for me.
It's true for all of us.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm learning is that, and I think as a culture we're learning, is that sleep is so important. And our culture thinks that busyness and just going with your, hair on fire all the time is the way to go. And it has real health consequences for everybody, especially for somebody with a cognitive issue, but for all of us. And so I've just recently been working on, making sure that I get more like 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. Now, there's been a large portion of my life where I didn't do that, which is, it may show up later as a long-term consequence, but rest is really important for all of us.
How about you, Dennis? How's your sleep? Do you have
Well, that was one
problems?
of the first symptoms that that presented when I was when I started having these cognitive issues. One of the first symptoms is I went from sleeping or needing only 6.5, 7 hours of sleep a night for decades. Suddenly, I'm needing 12, 13, 14 hours. I'm sleeping a full 8 hours at night and then napping 2 and 3 times a day for a couple of hours each, or an hour and a half, or an hour, and just hitting a wall and not being able to take another step before I lie down and sleep for an hour. And it's not like it's a choice. The body just says no more. So that was a really, really drastic change, even more so than the aphasia, dropping words, and the articulation issues. So
Well, thank you very much for that. And I just want to say that I have learned a lot today that I didn't know about MS and other things. And so that's why I'm really enjoying this podcast, because it helps my life. And I want to say thank you to Dennis again for being here, Margaret, for you, and Sue. Thank you so much.